Ladies and gentlemen, to this afternoon's Cabinet meeting here at Newcastle-under-Lyme Borough Council. I'd like to welcome Cabinet members in the room and our officers joining today, and also our representative from the media as well. Welcome. And also anybody that's watching online, if you'd like to see the agenda for this meeting, it is linked below the video. So I've got today joining me Councillor Craig Scalding, who's portfolio holder for Leisure, Culture and Heritage. I've got Councillor Jill Heatham, who's portfolio holder for Community Safety and Wellbeing, and Councillor David Hutchins, portfolio holder for Sustainable Environment, and then Councillor Andy Fear, portfolio for Strategic Planning. I'm Council Leader Simon Tagg. We don't have any apologies today, so we can move to item 2 on our agenda, which is declarations of interest for any items on the agenda. Any members have any? Not seeing any. Okay, item 3 is minutes of the previous meeting, which was held on the 17th of October. Can we agree those as a correct record? Thank you. And now we move to our first item of business, which is our Walleys Quarry update report. As I say every time, this is the monthly report we get from our officers on updating us on the issues around Walleys Quarry, complaints, monitoring, council actions, EA actions, and obviously the community feedback we've had.
Thanks, Leader. Yeah, I'll keep this fairly brief today. The report is fairly much the format that you've seen before, albeit we no longer have the long track of hydrogen sulfide data because of the issue that the EA had with the recording of that data. But I'll come to that in a second. Generally speaking, I would say the downward trend in complaints resulting from the odours at Walleys is continuing. So during October, we saw 87 complaints. Now, while that's still a significant number, compared to last year, the same month, 206, compared to the year before, 190, and indeed the spring of this year each month was recording between 200 and 300. So the 87 complaints, while clearly the odours have been a problem for people on at least 87 occasions, sufficient for them to want to report that to us. It's well down on previous times. In the last week or so, we're seeing complaint levels run at about 1 per day. So it's well down. And of course, as we know, it does tend to fluctuate with the weather conditions. So times when there's higher dispersion, we tend to see less complaints because any hydrogen sulfide that is coming off the site is being dispersed in the wind. We had the issue with the Environment Agency's calibration of the 3 MMF machines, which we rehearsed at the last cabinet meeting. Now, on the 19th of October, they have calibrated the other 2 MMFs. So they did the one in Gallingale during September. They've now done the 2 MMFs for the other 2 sites, numbers 1 and 2, on the 19th of October. So you've got now data from all 3 of the monitoring stations contained within your report. You will see that one of the things that we're seeing there is MMF1 is showing that it was recording hydrogen sulfide above the annoyance threshold for almost 14% of the time in the last week of October, which for that monitoring station is actually really quite high. Normally we see Gallingale, which is MMF9, as being the most problematic data, whereas that one has actually pipped Gallingale for that particular time. Because of the problem that we had with the MMF data, we've also been deploying officers on the ground in order to try and witness the odour and do assessments. During October, we did around about, I think it was 54 assessments as detailed in the report. And on a number of those, we did pick up odours, but the assessments and using the handheld monitoring device, the Jerome device that we use, again, to sort of what we'd say, double check our own human assessments. We didn't find odours that were above that annoyance threshold. The highest that we saw was just below that annoyance threshold. So I think it's fair to say that, you know, what we saw in October told us, yeah, there was hydrogen sulfide in the community. It's backed up by the complaints. It's backed up by the monitoring stations, and it's been witnessed by our officers, albeit not at the levels that would allow us to that would have triggered any sort of abatement activity. And so at the moment, it's very much continue as you go. The Environment Agency are continuing their work to see whether or not the data over the last few years can be corrected in some way so that we can actually see a truer picture of what the hydrogen sulfide levels should have been. But that does remain work in progress. And as soon as we have any outcome from that, I will report it to Cabinet. But that's the picture as we have it today.
Thank you, Martin. As always, thank you for that full report. Bringing in Andy first.
Thanks very much. And yes, it is useful to have this data. It's a shame, of course, we've lost a lot of the past data. Hopefully the material we have now is reliable. It is a little bit concerning, isn't it? The MF1 site, that's a very large rise in recording there. I mean, that's about 1 hour in every 7, I think. Almost 1 hour in every 6 at 13.7%. And of Gallingale again, of course, 1 hour in 10. It's the other thing that I don't know if colleagues share my concerns. If we look at the complaints data, I think the Chief Executive is quite right to say that these are lower complaints than we have. But the direction of travel, particularly in complaints to the Environment Agency, which I note number over 200 for October, we seem to have a sort of bottoming out of complaints at the end of September, beginning of October. But since then, we've persistently ratcheted up reporting point after reporting point. So I do think we do need to keep our eye on the ball here. I would hope that rise is arrested, because otherwise, of course, it's going to become very problematic indeed. So there are, unfortunately, still some dark clouds on the horizon, I think.
Martin.
Yeah, I mean, we do keep an eye on the data. I'm looking at this over a long term, and as I say, that's why I compare the 87 complaints that we've had to the couple of hundred that we've seen before. And as I say, it does fluctuate to some extent with the weather. So you can see there in that first week of November for us, 4 complaints. That has then, today, yesterday, we're seeing only 1. So it'll be interesting when we do get the Environment Agency's complaint data to see whether or not that does echo this. But they have tended to track reasonably closely.
Thank you, Martin. Steve.
No, thank you, Leader. Yeah, I mean, more complaints, bit of a blip as well. Is there any way that we can put sort of Walleys on a notice sort of thing with this, say, this isn't really very good. Are we going to do something about it? What's your plans for dealing with it? Can we do that sort of thing with Walleys?
We have regular dialogue with Walleys, and when we have the complaints, they are passed through with our comments. Walleys are well aware of the council's position vis-a-vis the complaints and the trends, etc.
Is there any possibility through our, obviously, agreement with Walleys and the abatement notice process and our almost, we've said before, our almost regulatory framework we put around the abatement notice, a way of sort of almost firing a warning off to them to say, look, because I agree with Andy, I agree with Steve, some of these figures are increasing, the community are more aware of it. It could be the time of year because of the weather-related issues have always been around this odour. But is there any way in which, obviously, as a council on our hard-won abatement notice process and the tie-ins we've got with that, we can actually do that?
We've written to Walleys in the past since the abatement notice, raising concerns, and we would continue to do that. So it's part of the process that we follow.
Okay, and I think we need to watch it obviously over the next weeks and months as we go through the winter for any further deterioration. I'm sort of really encouraged that we are still out there doing our own monitoring of this through the handheld equipment which we have, responding to residents' complaints, which is always what we said we would do. And it's interesting that the results from those are showing that it is below that risk level. And of course, as we know, a certain level has to be reached for the abatement notice to be triggered. And we, from what I understand from your comments earlier, Martin, we haven't reached that stage yet. But we continue to monitor it. One last thing I would like to add is obviously there is still a lot of concern in the community about the EA's failure on the monitoring, and we hopefully will see some retrospective. I know our local MP is calling for that retrospective data, amended data going back. I know that's very difficult to do, and the EA working on this. We did have a November sort of deadline. The EA set themselves for that, and of course we're now into November, so we'll be watching that very closely. Also, I mentioned at the last cabinet meeting that there was going to be a Staffordshire County Council health scrutiny meeting in this room, where the scrutiny committee from the county were coming up. They were going to invite Newcastle members, local members as well, to attend to look into the health issues associated with this, which is the main concern of a lot of people, and also to talk to the health agencies, etc. But I understand at the moment, as it stands, the Environment Agency have said that they are not going to attend. They may send a report in, but I would just ask really on behalf of local councillors in the community, their enablement to be able to question the EA, and also to be able to see them in a room being held to account along with the health experts as well, needs to be something which we need to see. And I would ask that through the SCG, as our chief executive representative on there, if you could raise that with the Environment Agency and ask them if they could attend.
Yeah, happy to do that.
Thank you. Any other comments on the report we've got before us? Obviously, the recommendations, we note the comments of the updated report. All agreed? Thank you. Moving then to our next item, which is the Newcastle Town Deal projects in Knutton, and Steve is going to lead on this. Steve.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. This has been an update on Knutton. Knutton, I first had the honour of getting elected to this council in 2006, and people have talked about Knutton since 2006. And nothing ever seems to get done, and it's taken this government, this administration, to actually do something about improving the area. Now, this report is an update report. If you turn to 2.1, the principal project elements of Town Deal are construction of football change room, delivery of housing within the village, expansion of Newcastle Enterprise Centre, and provision of a new village hall. This report mainly considers the housing within the village and the expansion of Newcastle Enterprise Centre. Now, there's various amounts of money. We've got to sell land to Aspire. Aspire will pay us for that. We're going to sell land to the county council. The county council will pay us for that to bring the site together so it could developable. There's a confidential appendix at the back, which actually says the amount of money that we're involved. But this is the first stage of pulling the plans together, of site assembly, of bringing it all together. And I think at last, I think we talk about putting the heart back in Knutton, and I think that's a very valid point. I think it's great credit that we're spending all this time and money on it to improve Knutton for our residents. Thank you.
Steve, that's great. I think this multi-million-pound redevelopment as part of the town deal just shows it's not all about Newcastle Town Centre. There's plenty we're doing in Newcastle Town Centre and is badly needed, and we're seeing the starts of that now through the Future High Streets Fund and the town deal to follow. But this is really ambitious proposals which we're working with partners in our county and Aspire Housing to really, as you say, Steve, put the heart back into Knutton, bringing that investment and employment opportunities for local people, and much needed leisure facilities, which have really been withdrawn from Knutton over the years. I think this administration has been clear right from the start that all areas of the borough matter. That's why we put our town deal in that way, that showed that it wasn't just all about one area, it's about the whole borough. And of course, we've got the Kidsgrove town deal as well, which is the northern part of the borough, our second town. But I think that potential for the village hall, those enterprise units, those residential developments as well, bringing more people to live, within the Knutton village area will help the local shops to prosper as well, and the local pubs and other facilities as well. So I think it's all good news for Knutton, and comes on the back of the decision we made recently about the whammy as well, which is really important. And I think I know we've just come out of a by-election in Knutton, which is always quite a feisty affair, and interesting to see. I hope the new you actually could update me, Steve, if the new ward councillor has been involved since he's been elected in these proposals.
As far as I'm aware, no, he hasn't. I think if Councillor Huckfield has still been the member for Knutton, I think he'd be sitting in his room now, purring with joy over this. But obviously, the new member isn't so keen. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. That's a shame, because I know the previous member that had to resign from the Labour group and causing the by-election, former councillor Steph Tubbett, was really quite heavily involved in this, wasn't she? She was involved in the public consultation. I'm sure she would either have put representations in or been here today. So that's a sad news for Knutton, unfortunately. But we are where we are. We have the recommendations before us. At least us Conservatives are sticking up for Knutton, and we're doing that here as we have done through the last couple of years as we brought forward these projects for Knutton. And the recommendations are quite extensive, but I'll quickly go through them. Note the progress of the master plan. Authorise the Deputy Chief Executive in consultation with the portfolio holder for finance, town centres and growth to complete the disposal of the land at Knutton Village at High Street as indicated in Appendix B to Aspire Housing for the purpose of building the new housing within the village. Recommendation 3, authorise the Chief Executive in consultation with, again, the portfolio holder to complete the disposal of the land at Knutton Village as indicated in Appendix C to Staffordshire County Council to enable the expansion of the Newcastle Enterprise Centres. And then 4, authorise the Deputy Chief Executive, again in consultation with the portfolio, to develop proposals for a new village hall in Knutton on land adjacent to the Aspire site, as indicated in Appendix D, and to submit a planning application. And then finally, I believe, oh no, it isn't. Yes, it is over the page. Authorise the Deputy Chief Executive in consultation again with the portfolio holder to seek expressions of interest from organisations interested in undertaking the management of the new village hall in Knutton, and to complete any such agreement required to enable a lease or management of the new village hall to be agreed. Everybody in agreement with those recommendations? Thank you. We'll move then to our next item, which is item 6, which is temporary accommodation policy, and Jill is going to lead on this. Over to you, Jill.
I'm just going to give a quick overview. I don't think you need it word for word. It's in front of you. Case law suggests that local authorities have this policy and that is reviewed regularly. Temporary accommodation requirements arising locally and nationally, due in part to lack of affordable housing and the higher cost of living crisis. Temporary accommodation for the borough and across the country encompasses homeless families and individuals, and we use accommodations such as hotels, hostels and any other accommodation that the local authority can access. This is shown in more detail in section 4 of the policy. Temporary accommodation costs are rising, both in cost of accommodation and the higher numbers of homeless presentations. A concern for Newcastle Housing Advice, the Council's provision for homeless housing advice and support, is the increasing out-of-hours numbers of presentations. It's triaged before it gets to the housing team, which reduces the out-of-hours contact to the team. However, accumulated figures for quarter 1 and 2 are shown in the table at 2.3 and are currently 128. Homelessness can be for a variety of reasons, such as domestic abuse, hospital discharges, police referrals, and private landlords giving the tenants notice to quit. They may be selling the property or looking at other means of renting it out. The temporary accommodation policy is important to manage the increasing numbers and to provide options for temporary housing. The local authority are working with housing providers to increase the supply of suitable accommodation, and funding has been given for a homeless hub that will help to give that provision. The policy seeks to manage these issues and enable the council to fulfil its statutory homelessness obligation, and I ask that Cabinet approve the proposed temporary accommodation policy.
Along with you, I think we've obviously signed up to the government's commitment to obviously enable as many people as possible not to be in difficulties when it comes to housing, whether that's having to not sleeper rough on the street or getting into some accommodation as soon as possible. I think this update to this policy is both timely and relevant, given the cost of living issues we're also still experiencing across the borough as well as across the country. So the recommendation for us is to approve the temporary accommodation policy. Do I have any other speakers on before I move that recommendation? Not seeing any. Thank you for your work on this, Jill, and also to our officers. If you could pass on the thanks to the team that are around temporary accommodation and homelessness in general, who do a really good job on behalf of the residents of the borough, and particularly for those people that are in need at this time. Okay, all agreed? Thank you. Moving then to our next item, which is the future delivery of internal audit service. Steve's going to lead on this.
Okay, thank you. The internal audit at the moment is delivered by Stoke-on-Trent City Council, a 3-year contract with a 1-year extension, which we took up. So 4 years, that's now finished, and we need now to look for another supplier. Stoke are more than welcome to bid again, as are the county, as are private suppliers, as are anything else. Really, this is a process that we're going through. There's no ulterior motive. The contract with Stoke expired. Stoke did an absolutely fine job with it, and we've got to take on somebody else now. It could well be Stoke again. Who knows? That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Any other comments? Not seen it. I think just to move the recommendations is that, of course, Steve said this is a necessary process we have to go through to ensure we have our internal audit service in place. So the recommendations are: we note the requirement of the internal audit service, authorise officers to conduct a procurement exercise as Steve set out, and then authorise that the award in the contact to tender evaluation is delegated to the Chief Executive in conjunction with the Director for Finance, S151 officer, and also portfolio holder Steve as well. All agreed? Thank you. Moving then to our next item, which is the revised agency framework proposal, and Dave is going to lead on this for us. Over to you, David.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. If I can just do a small recap before we start on this. At the Cabinet meeting on the 18th of July, it was recommended that the Cabinet approve the process for procurement for the supply and delivery of temporary staffing for both recycling and waste and the street scene service areas. As our portfolio holder for leisure, culture and heritage wasn't here, and also the legal and monitoring officer, who is new, also wasn't at that July meeting. I just thought it'd be a good idea to do a little bit of a recap at the beginning. As we are all aware, in May and June 2023, the Sustainable Environment portfolio had staffing issues. The shortage of drivers caused us to look at dual driver and loader roles. This was instigated and is proving to be a big success. We do look to employ students in the summer and the winter holiday times, but students in the summer period could be used for increased garden waste collections and to carry out ground maintenance at our parks and open spaces. This approach has been utilised in the past, but sickness and other issues have meant at times the number of additional staff have not had the desired impact in supporting the increased work demand. So practice has shown us that agency staff are more efficient to call on to cover the peaks in demand, short-term shortages, and covering for sickness, which remains a concern for the two services, the recycling and waste and the street scene. So in July this year, Cabinet approved a procurement process to deliver a new temporary agency personnel framework for the sustainable environment areas. Now, working through this procurement process, an opportunity was identified working with West Midlands employers to adopt an alternative solution, which provides a corporate-wide managed solution for the use of agency staff, negating the need for a standalone procurement process. This will enable a council-wide scope rather than a scope focused solely on the Sustainable Environment Directorate. So this proposal before us today involves using a framework agreement recently procured by the West Midlands employers. Now, the West Midlands employers is a non-profit organisation funded by several shareholding councils in the West Midlands region, including the Newcastle-under-Lyme Borough Council, which is a founding member. So yes, Newcastle-under-Lyme Borough Council, it's worth repeating, is a founding member of the West Midland employers. So another example of the Newcastle-under-Lyme Borough Council leading the way. So the organisation supports and delivers workforce expertise in local government across the West Midlands and therefore is uniquely placed in terms of their understanding and appreciation of the workforce challenges we face at Newcastle-under-Lyme Borough Council. So the proposed contract would be delivered by West Midlands Temps in partnership with West Midlands Employers and Opus People Solutions. This gives us a management solution which has been thoroughly extensive procurement process, has already been through an extensive procurement process regionally. So the proposed model delivers the outcomes sought through the previous Cabinet decision in July, but without the time and cost requirements of running a procurement exercise. Additionally, this model enables the Council to benefit from the procurement across all services, not just the Sustainable Environment Directorate, which is the heaviest user of agency staff. So the recommendation, therefore, Leader, is that the Cabinet agree to contract with West Midlands Temps for the temporary agency provision. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Open up to any other comments? I think in support of this, I think it's something which we've always, since we've run this council, wanted to have, correct procedures in place, address any issues as they come up. And I think this actually covers both of those, doesn't it, with this this contract, which we can enter into for temporary agency provision. And I will support you in moving the recommendation. All agreed? Great. Thank you. We'll now move to our next item, which is the Finance Performance Review Report second quarter. First part of that is, as usual, the financial update, and I'll hand over to Steve just to outline that.
Thank you, Leader. As of quarter two, we're positive variance of £7,000 has been achieved. The projected outcome on the general fund revenue account for the year is 16.836 million. This represents a positive outturn of 21,000 for the year. This report now, as we developed it over the last few years of this administration, we're putting more and more information in this. I think we've always said we're an open and transparent council. We don't have secrets, and everything anybody's ever asked for is on this report. It also details the positive progress of the efficiency and savings plans for 23-24, and progress of the capital programme, major projects, including the town deals, future high streets, and shared prosperity funds. It's all in here for people to look at. Finally, the report represents a summary of Treasury management activity from which interest over £600,000 has been generated during the first two quarters, and the collection of business rates and council tax, both of which are largely in line with the expectations for the year. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. I think just making that point that obviously those investments are paying a higher return now because of the higher interest rates, aren't they? It's one of the sort of the other sides of a higher interest rate is that we can get more on the council's investments and savings, can't we? Which we are maximising that, which obviously helps us budget in year and going forward as well, particularly as we do hold town deal and future high streets funds money. As we bring those projects forward, they'll be held by the council and gaining interest. So that's a plus for us in that respect. But on the other side, inflationary pressures are adding to the costs, as we know, throughout, and we have to balance that as we move forward with the budget, which of course we'll have more details on the budget as we go forward in our next cabinet meeting in December when we bring forward our savings proposals. So any questions to Steve on the financial report? Not seeing any, so we'll move now to our performance. Obviously, we'll go through it page by page. Just I think the headline figure of we're up to 79% on target now with our new indicator set. If you remember, this was a more stretched indicator set that we brought in with our new council plan. So we'd had dipped below 80%. Well, I'm pleased that we're now heading back towards that and 79% at this quarter. Just to, as we go through, you will see that Jill Waring's name is still against the portfolio for leisure, culture and heritage, because of course during this period she had that role, but Craig will be making any comments where relevant, and of course the next time we have a quarterly update, it will be in Craig's name fully. So if we look at the first indicator, which is priority 1, council delivering for local people, there are a number of indicators on the front page there relating to food hygiene, business food inspections and housing benefit claims. Any comments on those from either David or Stephen? David, yeah. The percentage of food premises that have a 0 or 1 national food rating is less than 1%. The target is 5%, so we're less than 1. The current total is 0.58%, which is excellent.
the percentage of category A and B food businesses that were inspected on time is 100%, which well, you can't really get better than 1%. So that's an excellent figure.
Steve.
Yeah, I think if you look at the time taken to process housing benefits, this is your one council thing in working working perfectly. That's what it's for. We're taking money out of it, and yet it's the end of year target is 10, and we're 4.75. So you can do a hell of a lot more with less money if you put it right.
Good point, Steve. Moving on to our next page, still on the priority one council living for local people. You'll see the sickness is showing up as a red there, but that is a reduction on what we've had previously. And I think we have talked about the measures we're putting in place quite exhaustively through scrutiny, cabinet and full council. So we'll just see how those measures begin to bed in over the next couple of quarters to see if we can reduce sickness even further back into our target line. Of course, as we do know, there is a problem with sickness across the economy, both in private and public sector. I think really our approach to sickness was endorsed by the scrutiny committee at its last meeting, our FAP scrutiny committee, where they received a detailed report from myself and also our HR manager, and they endorsed that. And there was an option that they may want to have a working group, and they decided not to because they felt that the measures we had in place needed time to show to work. And of course, the scrutiny committee will be looking at sickness again when they receive this and future quarters at their meetings. I think the others on there are staff turnover in green and staff vacancy rates are consistent, but also moving down to accidents reported. Anything to say on that, Steve? No, in target?
No, it's on target. The figures are so small. I mean, it's sort of 2 as opposed to 3 last time. So no.
Yes, and then over the page again, we're looking at some more customer service indicators showing all on target there. Call handling, council tax collected, Steve, and also non-domestic rates collected, all on target. Anything to comment?
No, other than it's a really good set of figures, and well done to everybody concerned. And once again, this is places where money's been taken out, and you can still get the job done.
Yes. And then over the page to page 90, and we've got a red there under the online digital transactions, but it's actually such a small amount. The target is 34,000 and we reached 33,543,000. So I think it's such a minor target there. But as you can see on the trend, if you look over to over the past year or so, our online transactions are increasing as we wish to through our One Council plan and our revamped website, etc. As you'll see further down, the website is generating users, and also we've got our number of calls offered through the customer centre there, which is again showing that we still need our customer service hotlines, and also people have been able to come into this building as well, and we're not going to neglect that, but we will be moving to more online transactions as that's what people are asking for, to be able to contact the council 24/7. But we're just slightly below the target there, but it's such a minimal amount that will be interesting to see how that bounces back, hopefully in the next quarter. Over the page then we have some indicators there for David on recycling, and there's a couple of reds there, David, for you to talk about.
Yeah, the first indicator is the dry recycling. The number of households that have collected dry recycling in the quarter is 21.76%. The target is 25%. Recycling rates across the country are falling, potentially due to the cost of living crisis. Residual waste volumes have not increased, so it's not that people are putting it in the grey bin, they're just not putting as much in the blue bin. So it's possibly a change in residents' behaviour. I know personally myself, it's been 3 or 4 months since I've bought prepared veg and prepared potato, mashed potato in tubs and so on. So I tend to be now preparing from scratch. So I'm putting less myself in the blue bin. Possibility that the blue bin is only going out perhaps once a month. But that's something that we can maybe look at for the next quarter to see how many missed blue bins there were, because they're not just being put out. The council still remains the second highest performer in Staffordshire authorities for recycling. So that's good. The next one, we've got 35% of households are recycling food waste. So that's good. So the target is 35 and we're actually 35. The next target is we want the residual waste for the first 6 months of the annual year to be less than 215 kilos per household. It's coming in at 204 kilos. So again, the residual waste is lower than the 215 target, which is good. The final one on this page, we have missed collections of 72.68 per 100,000 collections. Staffing issues along with the vehicle problems have disrupted collections over the summer months, resulting in more missed collections than we would like. However, the successful collection rate is still very high at 99.99% collected.
Thank you, David. Yeah, I think on that last bit, obviously this is that summer quarter, isn't it? When we've had those, the bug that went around in our depot service area, and also I think we've taken the measures since then. Just as we've been discussing earlier on the cabinet agenda about temporary staff in this particular area of waste collection is always going to be needed, and we need them on tap to come in to be able to take up any slack. I think on that first indicator, I think you're quite right. And also I think we are now moving hopefully towards a waste minimisation policy as well as a high recycling. We want that recycling to be less because we want to have minimised and reuse, I think, and less packaging. I think the government are certainly pushing for that in its advice it's now giving on recycling, which it announced recently. And I think that sort of move to be reuse, less packaging is something which we're going to see expand over the next few years. And I think the retail sector have seen that as well. If you do go to your supermarkets now, you see less packaging and different types of packaging than the old days. And I think that's going to have an effect upon our recycling, but also I think it's going to be a recycling more of a smaller amount of recycled material that comes forward, which can only be for the good. We'll go over to the next page then, which is our last page on One Council delivering for local people. And we've got a couple more, a full page for you there, David, including a yellow amber one as well. But David, over to you.
Yeah, the first is a survey of residents. Are you happy that the streets are predominantly free of litter? And the response was 97.5%. Yes, they were happy. The target was 92%. So it's a green. We're over that. The second survey was, are you happy that the streets are free of detritus? I think we had problems. The previous sweeper fleet became very unreliable, and design faults took a number of them off the road over this period in time. So that put the sweeping schedules behind. The new sweeper fleet is now in service, and it's now redressing the backlog. We purchased 3 new small sweepers, and they were named by local school children in the borough. They were named as Sweeping Beauty, Homer Sweepson, and Lightning McLean. Those little sweepers can go through underpasses, and they start the working day at about 6 in the morning. So they're very good new sweepers now, and they're performing well. We've also purchased 4 medium-sized sweepers, and once we have them, I'm afraid. So again, we had another competition with local school children. We have Sir Sweep a Lot, we have Candy Brush, we have Sweepy McSweeperson, and my favourite, we have Sean the Sweep. So we should basically see a bounce back because those sweepers are now in position. The next survey was, are you happy the council area is free of graffiti? That was 100%, yes. 98% was the target. And then finally, flag posting. Are you happy about the council's flag posting? And also obviously happy with the level of the flag posting, and 100% said yes. The target was 99. So I think it's a good set of results.
Thank you, David. Yeah, thank you for your enthusiasm as well on the naming of those things. Thank you to all of the school children that were involved. And I think it's really good to really promote what we're doing, bringing in the new machines, as you say, the right machines for the right job, and hopefully we can cover more ground and acreage on our street cleaning processes to keep that borough clean. It's really interesting to see, in that survey that 97.5, people are saying that the level of cleanliness in the borough is as they would see it. I think there's still a long way to go. I think not everything on street scene falls under the responsibility of the borough council. There are a lot of weeds on pavements and in gutters, and that of course is the county council. And I'm pleased that they are upping the weed spraying now again, which is really key to keep those under control as we move forward. But I think I think one of our key priorities is that local street scene environment, and I think this new equipment we brought in as a response to some of the issues that the old equipment we're giving us is set us in good store for the future. And also, of course, these vehicles are running on our as environmentally friendly as they possibly can be with HVO fuel as well, so they're actually not adding to our carbon emissions neither, which is really good. David.
Yeah, can I just mention the 4 new sweepers that we recently bought, the medium-sized ones? They are using the hydro-treated vegetable oil, and they take the council's carbon output down by another 8%.
Excellent. Thank you, Dave. That concludes our first priority. Moving to our second priority, which is our successful and sustainable growing borough. And we've got a number of indicators here in the planning area, which fall under Councillor Andy Fear, I believe.
And I fear you're right, Simon. This again is, I think, an excellent set of figures. I think everyone in the planning service that the council has done us proud, and I'd like to thank them for their very hard work on our behalf. When we look at some of these targets, we can see we're well in excess of what we're set. So if we look on page 96, we can see target 66 achieved 91.8, target 70 achieved 95.5, following page target 66 achieved 91.8, target 70 95.5. So I think, you know, we've got a lot to say thank you for our planning service. I've got to be honest, of course, not all is rosy in the garden. We do have a yellow on enforcement, but we are almost there. It's an improvement on last time. We've got a new policy which will no doubt help things as well. So this is at least a rosebud, if not a blooming rose in that respect. So I think, you know, all is well here, and thank you very much for everyone who's achieved these figures.
Thank you, Andy. I'll echo that. I think we had a long period now where these particularly in your planning area have been, and under your predecessor, Councillor Northcott as well, have been really sort of good. And I think for me, being on this authority now for 20 years, I can remember when our planning service was in special measures pre-2006. And in the run-up to that, and I remember when we came in as administration in 2006 the first time, and you'll remember this, Andy, as chair of planning, we had to do a real proper reconfiguration job on the planning service here, and then we began to dip again in the mid of the last decade, and I'm pleased since we came in 17 we begin to turn it around again. I think also at the same time we're pressing forward with our local plan as well, which is a necessary thing as part of the planning process. So I think we're doing really well in this area. Long may we continue. I think if you could pass on to our in fact, our head of planning is actually around the table today, so I'm sure you can pass on Craig Jordan to our staff on Cabinet's pleasure to announce these indicators again for the planning area. Long may it continue. I think what we'll just touch on now before we move on to our next portfolio is there is a separate thing about the sheet about the projects that are engaged at the time. Most of them are always on green because we're moving forward on a lot of the projects. One here has got an amber, which I think is worth talking about, and that relates to commercial delivery, and that's to do with the Kidsgrove Town deal. And it relates particularly to the railway station and issues to do with the project relating to that, which is at the moment is caught in I know our local MP for the area, Jonathan Gullis, is fighting the corner on getting some funding for some remedial work to the land around the station before we can actually then move forward with those, which is effectively a new station building, and we're just something that Kidsgrove really needs, along with the other developments through the town deal that are coming through there. But that amber is because of the historic mine workings on the site that need to be rectified, and we're hopefully going to hear in the next few weeks a plan for that, which will enable us to get back on target with the station project for Kidsgrove. But that's the only amber on those. We'll move then to our third priority, which is health, active and safe communities, and we have a page there for our portfolio holder for health and safe community safety and well-being, which is Jill. Any comments?
Yeah, as you can see at the bottom, I can't tell what page that is on. The regulatory, 100. Okay. Yeah, they ensure that there are good homes for everyone. Every citizen has a safe and secure place to live. Newcastle actually took over the contract for provision of disabled facility grants, DFGs. They inherited quite a large backlog of cases, and I'm pleased to say it's becoming very well established. They've had 32 grant completions since the 1st of April, and another 70 have been formally approved going forward. So it's all looking good for that. And certainly we got funding to secure a property to deliver the homeless hub project. That's ongoing at the moment because we're obviously identifying a property, but I think that should have quite a good impact then on how we deliver our options for homeless provision.
Thank you, Jill. Moving on to the next page, which has got a raft of indicators in the Healthy, Active and Safe Communities portfolio, which is covered by obviously Craig Skeldon, as I say, under the it was Jill at the time. But any comments on those to do with J2 and the museum, Craig?
Hi, thank you, Leader. I think needless to say, the figures across both sites speak for themselves. J2 showing an increase in full membership, block bookings of the classes on the increase, gym membership now approaching the 3,500 mark, and there's a steady increase on footfall of pay-as-you-go on the gym membership as well. It's looking quite healthy. Overall figures on customer satisfaction are looking really good. Across the site on Brampton Museum, they've got a busy schedule of events ahead of them with an 18-month exhibition plan going through not only through the next couple of quarters of this year, but deeply into the next financial year. They've got talks and films from Clarence Cliff celebrating the 850th year of the Borough. They're also marking the 80th year of the museum since it opened in the town centre in 1943. So hence the healthy, busy events and exhibition programme through the next year. So both sites are doing well, increased footfall on both sites, even online access to the museums on the increase. And the cafe is showing a healthy increase in trade on that site as well. So I think not just showing good figures for this quarter, but driving for growth in the next couple of quarters to end off the financial year well.
Thank you, Craig. I think on J2, it's a minor success story. I think, given the situation, all sports centres were in, particularly J2, with after the lockdowns, etc., to come back so strongly. I think I'm quite right to say that the new cafe is also, as it opened now in J2, is it Splash, as it's called? Great name. Good to see that after obviously the previous cafe project didn't quite work out for that business person, but the new one is will hopefully go from strength to strength and provide snacks and other stuff for people when they finish their activities in the pool or anywhere else. So really, really great to see that. And of course, the museum has really come into its own this year. And I think the drive needs to be to carry that on into our 851st year, which starts in January. And as we continue to promote the heritage of the borough, which is rich and, historic, and there's plenty to, we've sort of kicked off this year in talks in using the museum for various events, etc., that we should continue doing that. So really good picture. Look forward to more updates in future quarters. Thank you, Craig. Over the page then now, I think, Jill, you've sort of covered the housing ones, haven't you, already, which is good. So we move to our final priority, which is town centres for all. And we've got a series of indicators there, one for myself on footfall, again, which is measured by the Business Improvement District for us and continues to show improvement, demonstrating greater footfall figures as compared with the Q2 from last financial year, which is really good news that people come into our town centre and using those facilities, coming for the markets, coming for the bars, the restaurants, and also for the shops. But the other two, Stephen, are in yours. One is the car park usage. The other one is the market rates.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, and both showing good increases. And I'd say once again, and I'll say it many times, that if you give people what they want, people will come. And so we're doing this with our market, and these figures are testament to that fact. Thank you.
So I think that increase in purchase of car parking tickets, and we do have obviously the £1 after one, which is very popular, bringing people into our town for a lower reduced cost in the afternoon into the evening. And then that market going from strength to strength. And of course, at the last meeting, we agreed our market strategy going forward, which we'll begin to see some of that implemented through the future High Street Fund funding before the end of the year and then more in the new year to give our market a lift as well. And also that free market on Monday for traders as well, which hopefully will be very popular when that kicks in as well. So that's the last priority. We're asked in the recommendation to look at the performance. So we've done that, all agreed. Thank you. And then we move to item 10, which is the forward plan, which is attached. We'll quickly go through it page by page. The first page and most of the second page is related to this meeting, but then we come to our November meeting when we're looking at the procurement of the annual report. Sorry, Andy. What did I say? Okay. Thank you, Andy, for that update. Draft savings proposals be coming to us as well, and also the Chatterley Valley Small Business Project, as well as the Lucidian project as part of the town deal as we move those forward. And then we also got a Kidsgrove town deal contract for the shared service one, which I believe will not be coming to December, but will be coming to a cabinet early next year. So that will need updating our committee clerk for the next forward plan, because we've still got some work to do on that as we move forward on that investment in Kidsgrove. And then we move to the second page, which is our technology strategy, long awaited, and then our Walleys Quarry update, of course. And then we move into January, where we've got our budget stuff and also our Newcastle local plan update. And then we also have communications strategy as well. But then we've also got our February on here, which is going to be the revenue and capital budget and the town centre regeneration. I think that is probably where we will fit in the update on the Kidsgrove contract for the shared service hub garage replacement. Will go to February. So can we all agree the forward plan? Thank you. And then moving now to urgent business. I don't have any urgent business as defined. We do have one confidential item, which is basically just some of the commercially sensitive stuff around the Knutton project, which we will do in private session. So I will move that the public be excluded for the meeting during the consideration of that report, as there's likely to be disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph part 1, 12A, as amended the Local Government Act. Do we all agree? Thank you. So we will clear the room and turn off the recording. Thank you.